Good morning, partners in crime. I am thrilled to be with you today, and I have with me Jenny Dandy. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
It's great to have you with us. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Jenny. She is a graduate of Smith College and of Lighthouse Writers Workshop Book Project. And though she has lived and worked from Beijing to Baltimore and Northampton to Atlanta, it was New York that held on to a piece of her heart. She now lives and writes in the Rocky Mountains and would never lift a wallet or scam someone. Or maybe. So, we are here to talk about your first novel, The Brownstone on 83rd Street. So, can you tell us a little bit about this novel?
Well, it's so the Brownstone's owned by Isabel,
Mhm.
barely. And Isabel Anderson is has various schemes and cons to try to pay the property taxes on it so she can hold on to it. So it's very important to her. And so with her is Ronnie, who used to live on the streets, got caught stealing her bracelet, and she essentially kidnapped her to bring her home and train her to be her butler because Ronnie's very androgynous. And so she thinks that'll throw her marks off. And then Frank Jankowski is an FBI agent who, for various reasons, goes undercover and gets invitations to her dinner parties where she's trying to con her guests.
I love this, and your characters really make this book. They're everything for this. Um, but listen to this. Just I love it. When FBI Special Agent Frank Januskowski, how do you say that?
Jankowski. Yeah,
Okay,
Jankowski.
goes undercover at Isabel Anderson's brownstone on East 83rd Street. He thinks he's the one calling the shots, but Isabel knows she is. As Isabel's butler, Ronnie Charles is privy to all of her schemes, knowledge that will take her in a direction she never imagined. That just cracks me up because it plays out so well, but it seems so obvious, but it doesn't really play out the way you make it sound on the cover copy. So it's so cool how you make that like weave together.
Um, well, I don't, it's a big question. I guess go ahead.
No, please.
Uh, Um, gosh, I don't, well, Ronnie like one, Ronnie used to live on the streets and she was a petty theft, but
Hmm.
she has a very strong moral compass and really only stole when she had to. And what she really wants to do is just do her job. And Isabel makes it very hard sometimes to do her job. And she puts Ronnie in situations where she's a little bit troubled by, her moral compass is troubled. And then Frank really thinks he's all that. And he knows what's what. He's black and white. I think his wife refers to him as Mr. Black and White. He's law and order. He knows which side he's on and which side the criminals are on. And yet he's a little bit intrigued with Isabel because what Isabel does is seduce her marks. And she thinks that Frank is her new mark. And he doesn't realize that that's what she's doing. He thinks that he's the one who's, finding all the things out about her. So,
It's yeah, the way it all weaves together. Now let's talk about Ronnie a little bit. Um, Ronnie is she has such a strong moral compass, and for somebody that lives on the streets, and she is very much black and white, even actually more than Frank in some cases. So can you tell us a little bit about her and how she came about?
well, you mean in my head or how she came about as a character?
Maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah, well, so when early on, I did a lot of backstory. In fact, my whole book was backstory, and I had to learn to not put in so much backstory. So many, many, many revisions. But her backstory is that she grew up with her mother died when she was little, and she grew up with three older brothers and a very drunk father in a tiny apartment. And every brother would leave home at 18, and when her older brother, their next oldest brother, Matt, left at 18, even though she was barely 16, I believe. She just said, I'm going with you. I got to go with you. And so they ended up in the city and living on the streets. And um, so she's just learned to find her way and try to find it in a in a way that she can live with herself. And so she's while she's there, she manages to get like catering gigs. Like, sometimes they just have to fill in with some because she could do tray service. And when is um she meets up with Isabel, she at that point is living in a penthouse that's being renovated. She sneaks in when the workmen leave, and so she's not as disheveled as you might think. So living on the streets, and how she evolved in my head, I'm not really sure. I just was really intrigued with her, and I would do lots of character sketches to see what she was all about. And I don't know. I love all my characters. I just love, even Isabel. I adore Isabel.
Well,
I'm
Isabel
not.
is the nicest, evilest person that you would ever want to meet.
I had somebody say, just look me in the eye and go, I hate Isabel. And I'm like, great, I did my job.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
she's very elegant and knows what it takes to look like she's really, really rich and and just kind of tries to make everybody feel important, or especially her mark feel important. And so they just fall under her spell.
they really do. And to me, she's in a predicament that so many people find themselves in, um, unable to take care of herself. And so she's kind of just doing the only thing she knows how to do to make ends meet.
Yep. Yep. And she has this facade of she thinks she's elegant, but they're like stains on the couches that Ronnie tries to cover up with cushions, and she keeps the lights low so nobody will notice.
Yeah, and she gets people to do things that they wouldn't normally do without them realizing that they're compromising their ethics.
Exactly.
Yeah, wow. Now Frank is going through a lot.
He is going through a lot. It opens with him bringing his daughter into the emergency room because she, unbeknownst to him, is going through withdrawals of an opioid addiction. And she's 16. She was run over in the sidewalk by a hit and run driver on the, and so this is all the backstory, the previous, before the book opens. So she got hooked on all the opioids that the doctors prescribed and told them to give her. And then she, is supposedly healing and so needs to come off of them. And she ODs at his apartment. And so he brings her into the emergency room, and it's a shock, absolute shock. And that's when we meet Frank's ex-wife, who he keeps referring to as his wife, Susan. He sort of forgets, he just loves Susan so much that he kind of forgets that she said that, we have to get divorced because I'm not going to be married to the FBI.
I mean, they don't live together. They're not in any way together. So like, but he really cannot focus on the fact that they are not together.
Right, exactly, exactly. So then the daughter, I guess this isn't giving too much away. The daughter runs away. They put her in rehab and she runs away from rehab. And so he spends the book looking for her in the really gritty, seamy sides of New York City. So the tunnels and the parks where all the homeless and the crusties live. And
Yeah. Um, and as we go through that, Frank finds out he's not the person he thought he was. So can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, I don't want to give
Yeah,
too much away, but I mean,
right.
that's a
Well,
big
I
part
think
of.
there's two things that I think he does, and one's a sort of vigilante justice, and the
Mhm.
other is getting seduced by Isabel without really realizing it. And so Isabel, so one of her tricks is to get her, these marks, and they're all men, they're always men, to take her shopping, and so that she can live that elegant life and not have to pay for it.
Mhm.
And so she tries to do that with Frank, and he thinks, well, the closer I get to her, the better it'll be for the case. And she shoplifts in front of him, makes sure he sees it, and he sort of is startled, and then he realizes that he's thrilled by that illicit activity, and it really unnerves him. But he's in a quandary, but he has to see the case through because he's never not solved a case.
Yeah, it makes for a very interesting book because there is that personal like dilemma where he is constantly on the edge of, you know, kind of feeling guilty, but kind of excited by it. And like it's constant with him through the book.
Yeah, he likes those gold cufflinks. They make him feel really special.
Yes. Now, you have a lot of other characters in the book that play really important roles. Can you tell us a little bit about why they're important and how they develop your plot?
Well, let's see. There are a lot of characters in there. There's Philippe, who used to be one of Isabel's marks, and now he's sort of boyfriend bodyguard, and he hounds Frank because another one of her schemes is to have get people to donate to her foundation, which is a legitimate foundation, but of course, all the money just goes to her instead of the instruments for children in third world countries, which is what she had decided they were going to do. And most people don't even care because they make so much money, they feel guilty about it, so they just donate it and take the tax write-off. But Frank has pledged as his undercover persona, Peter Franks, and so fully pounds him, and that puts Frank in some interesting situations while he's trying to avoid him, and then there's a big confrontation, and a gun. And then, well, let's see, his partner, Pete, who's he feels very avuncular towards Ronnie, I think, and kind of keeps Frank from being too much of a hard ass about, because Frank's always threatening to put Ronnie in jail and just to try to get her to do stuff. And what he doesn't really realize is Ronnie would do things for him because she's very loyal,
Yeah.
and so it's that's sort of fun to see the two of them, interact, Pete and Frank. And then who else? So there's Annie Anarchy, who's the crusty girl who shows up ever
Yeah.
so often and is always trying to con in her own way people, like get food out of them or money or something. And she helps Frank. She and Ronnie actually both help Frank look for Kathy, and that's well, Annie doesn't quite help, but she's there.
I mean, she's participant.
And then
Yeah.
Susan, the ex-wife, does play a role. She's volunteering at Benedict House, which is a place for, there's homeless outreach, and
Mhm.
there are places to sleep, and Frank goes and tries to find Kathy there. I guess before Susan's volunteering.
Now, I know that you're very familiar with New York City, which is where this book is set. But the seamier areas and the um, halfway houses and stuff like that that you talk about, how did you do research for that? I
Well,
mean, I
there's
can't see you down
actually
in the.
I never did go down the tunnels, I must confess. But, well, first of all, there are some great YouTube videos out there of
Okay.
like places that people have carved out in the tunnels to live. I mean, it's just wild. And then there is an amazing book, which I can't remember the name of, but if I can come across it, I'll let you know. But it's of underground cities all over the world. So, you know, he
Oh,
goes
yeah.
underground in New York and in Paris, and I forget where else because I was really focused just on New York, and really describes what the life is like under there and what, you know, what it feels like the metal dust of the wheels on the rails of the subway. You know, and so I really took a lot of that to heart. And then
Mhm.
I guess just I don't know, you just sort of, you know, you can walk around with Google Earth and and YouTube. I mean, people, there are tons of people doing tours of New York City
Mhm.
on YouTube, and but that doesn't get to the seamier side. So I don't know. I think that just accumulation of movies and books and you know, studying up on it, it
And
just
of
really,
all
you
the
know,
places you've lived, why New York City? Why was that the one
um,
that you focused on?
I just loved it. I loved when I was there. I knew I couldn't stay because I would have, you know, couldn't afford it, but I loved the years that I was there. And so it's just always captured my imagination. And so many books are set there, but it, there, you know, it's in a funny way, it's actually a very small town because you can, you know, people tend to stay in their neighborhoods, you know, and you go to the
Mhm.
same coffee shops or whatever, and you see the same people. And so you can have, you know, Frank go undercover on the in the brownstone, and he can then live in somewhere in Midtown, and nobody would see him because
Yeah,
they
that
just
was
their
crazy
paths
to me.
wouldn't cross. Yeah, it's wild. It's just, you know, some people, I've heard people say, well, I never go below 86th Street. So it's just like everything stays in that area. And it's just there's so much vibrancy and a huge juxtaposition of wealth and not non-wealth that is fascinating to me. You can live in the same place and just be completely different, and there's just so many people. So I think there's so many possibilities too, and you can have lavish parties and then you can go into the tunnels under the subway system.
Well, and so Ronnie does a really good thing because she always is going to different areas to take things so that she's not going to the same places over and over again. And that's one of the things that reminds you of how humongous New York City is because she can walk there, she can, like, but it's all completely people that have never seen her before. And I just can't
Exactly. Yeah,
fathom that.
I know. It is so big. It's so vibrant and so but also so, yeah, localized. Yeah, so Isabel insists that she steals things for her parties because Isabel's not going to pay for it. And basically can't. But and so that's one of the conflicts for Ronnie because she'd rather not. But yeah, she has to go to different places, you know, the West Side and the, you know, Lower East Side to find stores that she hasn't robbed from already.
Well, and it's so interesting because you really bring the setting into that. As with talking about the stains on the couches and you know Ronnie's whole room, but the sights and the smells of New York City. So why is pulling that setting so important to your books?
Yeah, it's like the city's a character as
Yeah.
well as the brownstone is a character, the house is a character. It just I think it you just want to be part of it. You want to because otherwise it could be set anywhere if you don't have all the sights and sounds and the,
Mhm.
you know, the amazing things that are happening in the city wherever you go, you know, funky people dressed as bananas on skateboards. It's just
Now I have
there's
to ask,
just
what
so
is the
much.
weirdest thing you've seen in New York City?
No, there's I don't know, there's just too many things. I mean, everybody knows about the is he still there, the cowboy who plays the guitar in his underwear in Times Square? They may have cleaned him up, but there's There's just people doing their thing or doing funky things. They just don't care, walking an iguana on the sidewalk.
Wow. So, how did you do the research for this novel? I know you said you did YouTube videos and you have a couple books, but what other research was necessary for you?
Oh, well, I had to do a lot of research about the FBI,
Okay.
and going undercover. And so there are a lot of books, nonfiction about my life in the FBI kind of thing.
Hmm.
And there Donnie Brasco has I forget what his real name is, but he wrote about what it was like to be undercover. One of the tricks for is that I mean, you're really not supposed to commit crimes while you're undercover. You can get, if you know there's going to be something really tricky, you can get sort of if not a dispensation, but a coverage from the assistant U.S. attorney to sort of,
Hmm.
keep you. But really, you have to try to never
Well,
like
I
you
mean,
can't kill someone when you're under, right?
yeah.
um, and so that can get kind of tricky. All the ways you kind of maneuver around that. Um, I did a lot of research on that. Anytime somebody came out with a thriller that was set in New York, I
Mhm.
read that just to see how they really got you in there. The William Boyle well, he was South Bronx, but still that atmosphere. And Don Winslow, everybody, I mean, Alistair Burke has, all her books are set in New York. So I just tried to immerse myself. And then it was the pandemic, and so I was, you know, YouTubing it really mostly. I mean, you can't get all the sounds and all the tastes and smells, but you really can, walk the sidewalks and see what Union Square looks like and feels like.
Wow. And you're in Central Park and you're in the tunnels and and spend a lot of time in the brownstone. But even the FBI headquarters and stuff, you talked about that and set the scene there. And
Yes.
the surroundings, the actual they're actually the stores and stuff that you see in the restaurants.
Yeah.
So I found that really interesting because I mean it's real.
Well, I did before the pandemic. I did give myself I called it a personal writing retreat,
Mhm.
and I stayed in the apartment of a friend and just went and visited as many sites as I could of where my scenes were set. And
Mhm.
this was a little bit early on in the book, so some of those scenes never made it into the final. I had to cut them, but I just to get that feel and to see what has changed. So I'm not putting quarters into the subway to to ride the subway, thing. And now, so I think we had a Metro card in this book is kind of set in 2015, 2016.
Okay.
And there are Metro cards, and now there are no Metro cards. Today they've just eliminated you just use your credit card. Um,
Yeah.
or your phone. Um, and so, yeah, so I just walked around, and the thing that is so much fun, because I thought I was going to have a lot more of Ronnie and Matt, her brother, and then things had to move more quickly. So but anyway, when I was in New York, I walked up to the information booth at one of the subway stations, and I said, I'm a novelist and I'm writing a scene where somebody jumps the turnstile, but I noticed that you have these things where, to prevent that. Are there any stations where you could jump the turnstile? And the guy told me, you know, how to cheat. You know? And I was really surprised at how many people I could talk to by saying, I'm a novelist and I'm writing about this. Can you tell me about
Yeah.
this area or your store or something? And they just would talk to me. And so the whole thing about New Yorkers being rude is not, you just walk up and they're happy to talk to you. It's great.
It's a good thing you're not Isabel. You'd be using this all for nefarious purposes.
Exactly. I won't tell you I'm trying to shoplift in your store, but
How can I get away with that?
Oh.
So, can I ask, what is one thing that readers always ask you that just comes up a lot?
I think it's various forms of you seem so nice. How can you write these characters? I had an old friend who I worked with when I was in New York, and he said, "Did you actually know someone like Philippe? You know, because Philippe is this thug."
Yeah.
It's like, no. And I think
I mean,
it's
but I
just,
could definitely picture him.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I think most authors pull from all the different people they know,
Hmm.
the character driven writers,
Yes.
um, because they've been observing people all their lives. And so you pull from all these different things. Like, I guess I sort of go, well, let's see, what does Isabel look like? And then I think, do I know someone like that? And then I'll cobble together a whole bunch of different people to give her her own personality. And I think the whole thing about um, you have to give your characters like a roadblock.
Hmm.
And with that, first I thought, well, I don't want to be mean to any of my characters, but then they just wander around and have fun in the city, and that doesn't really make for an interesting story so much. So you have to kind of think of things they'll come up against. And you think, well, let's see. Frank really likes the FBI and he thinks he's really, law and order. What's the worst thing that could happen to him? And so his daughter runs away. He loves his daughter so much. So it's, yeah, creating all that stuff
Those things that
is,
create that slippery slope.
yeah. And then I have a critique partner who is really good at going, what's the worst thing that could happen? And she goes places I was like, whoa. And then I think, you're right. That has to happen.
So, I have exciting news, and Ronnie is coming back with Frank. So, and that'll happen in the near future. Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
Yes, the next book should be out within the next month, is called The Penthouse on Park Avenue.
Hmm.
And so Ronnie and Frank and Pete and Kathy and actually Annie, Anarchy, all and
Oh,
Susan, all come along. And then the place is different. Obviously, it's a penthouse. And Frank has identified a suspected money launderer for a very big drug cartel,
mhm.
and so they, as luck would have it, there's an opening for the butler, live what turns out to be a pretty dangerous situation. There'll be crime fighting again.
Now, I will point out, because I had this question immediately, this is not the same penthouse that Ronnie was in when she moved to Isabel's, correct?
Yeah, I guess so. There's a lot of penthouses in New York.
I know, but that was the first thing I thought was like, oh, is this going to be the same one?
I know, I know. Somehow it wasn't, but
That would have been kind of cool, though.
yeah. So John Anthony, the money launderer,
Mhm.
hasn't done a renovation in a while.
I mean, it makes sense. He really wouldn't want strangers in his house. All right. Well, I guess that we're going to have to wrap up. So, can you tell our listeners today how they can find you?
Well, I managed to get jennydandy.com as my website. So there's links on there to the socials, but I'm also Jenny Dandy author on Instagram and on Facebook.
And I think if I remember correctly, you're going to be at Sleuth Fest this year. Are there
I
any
will
other
be at
conferences?
I will be at Sleuth Fest. I will be in Mesa Verde. There's a Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers conference in Mesa
Mhm.
Verde there, and BoucherCon. I will be there, and then various bookstores mostly around Colorado, but I'm trying to think, is there what other conferences are there? I try to go as much as I can.
You make it to a lot, and you do both East Coast and West Coast. So that makes it a lot easier for readers to find you.
Yes, yes. So yeah, Sleuth Fest is in Florida, and
Mhm.
yeah, and then Left Coast Crime that'll next year that'll be in San Francisco.
That's going to
So
be fun.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, you check out Jenny's book, The Brownstone on East 83rd Street, and look out for The Penthouse on Park Avenue, which will be out very, very soon. So thank you so much. And